In 2008, at the age of 77, Warren Buffett became the richest man in the world, with a fortune estimated at the time at $62 billion, surpassing that of his friend Bill Gates and Mexican telecommunications tycoon Carlos Slim Helú. Since then, and even after giving some of it away to philanthropy, his fortune has grown to a staggering $135 billion in 2024. The question is, how did he do it? The simplistic answer would be to say that he started saving and investing when he was very young, buying his first shares when he was just 11 years old, an age when most kids are still playing with toys. That certainly helped. He was already a millionaire at age 32 when he bought Berkshire Hathaway, a failing textile company, in 1962 for around $7.5 a share, and after taking control, turned it into a behemoth of a company whose shares are now worth over $600,000. But those are just facts. They don't help you much to understand the process. To understand the process, one of the most important things to understand is that Warren Buffett is a learning machine. What made him successful in his 20s is not what made him successful in his 30s. He always kept learning and evolving, and this made all the difference in the world. This is how Charlie Munger, his longtime friend and business partner, explains this point.
You are not going to get very far in life based on what you already know. You're going to advance in life by what you're going to learn after you leave here. If you take Berkshire Hathaway, which is certainly one of the best regarded corporations in the world, and it may have the best long-term investment record in the entire history of civilization. The skill that got Berkshire through one decade would not have sufficed to get it through the next decade with the achievements made. Without Warren Buffett being a learning machine, continuous learning machine, the record would have been absolutely impossible.
Let me repeat that. The skill that got Berkshire through one decade would not have sufficed to get it through the next decade without Warren Buffett being a continuous learning machine. Why is this so important to keep in mind? For two big reasons. The first is that when you are studying Warren Buffett, as you should, you need to take into consideration the context in which he made each decision. The same is true for his annual letters and speeches. You can definitely learn a lot from those. But you also need to keep in mind that his thinking might have evolved. If you don't do this, you might be taking ideas that worked in the past, but that are not applicable to the present anymore. Don't get me wrong. Warren Buffett is most definitely a great role model to study. You just need to take into account his continuous evolution. If you stop to think about it, you might end up arriving at my second point, and that is that you must become a learning machine yourself. As the world keeps evolving, you must also adapt and keep learning to evolve with it. You should definitely read and study about smart people like Warren and Charlie, but nothing is set in stone, so keep an open mind. Before we use his investment in Apple as an example of how Warren Buffett always kept learning, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Warren made a lot of great investments throughout his career. American Express, The Washington Post, Coca-Cola, Gillette, to name just a few. Actually, the list of his investments that really matter is not much longer than this. As he admitted recently in his annual letter to Berkshire shareholders that just 12 big decisions really moved the needle for him. In a career of over 60 years, that's one great big decision every 5 years. So it was big winners like these that made the difference. But the biggest of all, at least in absolute terms, was none of these. It was Apple. He started buying Apple shares at the start of 2016. The cost was $31 billion. By the end of 2023, the same shares were worth $174 billion, a paper gain of over $140 billion. The point that I'm trying to make is that his Apple investment didn't happen in a vacuum. He has admitted that he only invested in Apple because he had invested before in Coca-Cola. And guess what? He also admitted that he only invested in Coca-Cola because he had invested earlier in See's Candies. Do you see the evolution? See's Candies taught Warren and Charlie about the power of a great brand. See's had such a strong brand in California that they noticed they could just keep increasing prices without losing market share. And that's a great position to be in. Warren explained this by saying, "If you've got the power to raise prices without losing business to a competitor, you've got a very good business. And if you have to have a prayer session before raising the price by 10%, then you've got a terrible business." Let's hear Charlie Munger explain why he loved the See's Candies business so much.
Well, I don't think I've got a favorite, but the one that probably did us the most good as a learning experience was See's Candy. It just, the power of the brand, the unending flow of ever-increasing money with no work.
Sounds nice.
It was, and I'm not sure we would have bought the Coca-Cola if we hadn't bought the Seas. I think that a life properly lived is just learn all the time. And I think Berkshire's gained enormously from these investment decisions by learning through a long period. Every time you appoint a new person that's never had big capital allocation experience, it's like rolling the dice. And I think we're way better off having done it so long. But the decisions blend. We had not kept learning, you wouldn't even be here. You'd be alive probably, but not here.
So See's showed them the power of a great brand in action. The only problem with See's Candies was that the brand didn't travel well. They kept trying to expand its presence outside of California, but it always failed. It always remained a local brand. For some reason, people have different tastes regarding chocolate in the West Coast of the United States and in the East Coast. And then it comes Coca-Cola. When analyzing Coca-Cola as an investment, they noticed that it was also a great brand like See's. But it had an additional big advantage. It traveled, meaning that every time Coca-Cola would start selling in a new country, sales would skyrocket. Realizing this, that Coca-Cola was like See's Candy on steroids, they made a huge investment in it that paid off handsomely. So now let me return to Apple. Having been through See's Candies and Coke, Warren eventually realized that Apple was an even stronger brand than they were. It could travel, and it had the additional benefit of having huge switching costs. These switching costs meant that once a consumer got into the Apple ecosystem, the trouble of switching to a competitor made it very unlikely that he would do so. And as people's lives got more and more intertwined with their mobile devices, that gave Apple huge pricing power. It was the realization of this pricing power that made Warren invest so heavily in Apple in 2016. Let's see a short clip in which Warren explains the power of Apple.
Apple is different than the other businesses we own. It just happens to be a better business than any we own. And we put a fair amount of money in it, but we haven't got more money in it than we've got in the railroad. And Apple is a better business. Our railroad is a very good business. It's not remotely as good as Apple's business. Apple, has a position with consumers where they're paying, maybe they pay $1,500 or whatever it may be for a phone, and these same people pay $35,000 for having a second car. And if they had to give up a second car or give up their iPhone, they'd give up their second car. I mean, it's an extraordinary product. We don't have anything like that we own 100% of, but we're very, very, very happy to have 5.6 or whatever it may be percent, and we're delighted every 1/10% that goes up. It's like adding $100 million to our earnings. I mean, our share of the earnings, and they use the earnings to buy out our partners, which we're glad to see them sell out too.
So there you have it. It's impossible to explain Warren Buffett's success by one single static factor. But if you have to choose one thing, it must be his continuous learning and evolution. And you can definitely get that he has this spirit by the answer he gave when asked about what was his next objective after becoming the richest man in the United States. Before we end with that final clip of his answer, don't forget to like and subscribe if you are interested in this type of content. Also, let me know your opinion in the comments. I'll take any constructive suggestions as a way to improve. As we just saw, continuous improvement is the key to success. Bye for now, and see you on the next one.
What is your next goal in life now that you're the richest man in the country?
That's easy. It's to be the oldest man in the country.
Oh.